Welcome to this video, and in this video I'm going to take you through how you are expected to answer your exam. Yes, so fast forward, we are going to read the question and then see how we are supposed to answer our question. All right, so we have a question on package delivery pay application. So let's read. We have delivery drivers are paid by the package. Drivers who deliver a great quantity of packages are often paid at a higher rate, as shown in the table below. So we have packages delivered and then rate paid per package. And we have all these ranges with their respective paid rates. So let's go to the task. We have use text boxes to obtain the person's name and the number of packages delivered. 2. Include a calculate button to display the amount earned. Rate per package multiply by packages delivered. You will need a summary button to display the total number of packages, the total pay, and the average pay per person. A clear button should clear the name and the number of packages for the current employee, and a close button should close the form giving the user options yes or no. Include validation to check for missing data and incorrect data. Also, you must handle exceptions that may arise. A. Set the properties of the text boxes and the button controls required at design time. B. Provide the codes for the following buttons: the calculate, summary, clear, and close. Alright, so let's take a look at the first one, which is A. Set the properties of the text boxes and the button controls required at runtime. So in this question, the first thing they asked us to do was to use text boxes to obtain the person's name and the number of packages obtained. So the text boxes we require are just two, which is a text box that is going to take the person's name and another text box that is going to take the number of packages. So let's go to the next page, and this is exactly how you are expected to answer the A section. So I added labels here, which is optional, right? So the labels are going to indicate which text box is taking the name and which is taking the number of packages. Yes, so label 1 and 2 are just optional things you can add. So we have text box 1, then you set the name property. We do not set any text property for the text boxes. So we have name text box and num packages text box as the name of each of our text boxes. Then we have button 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 buttons, one for calculate. So calculate button will be the name property of the calculate button. Then the text property is going to be calculate. The same thing, name property of summary button is going to be summary button. Then what the user is going to see, or the text property, is going to be summary. The same for the clear and the close. I added the error provider because in my validation, I'll be using error provider, but you can choose to omit it and use message box to display your message to the user. Right, so let's move on. Right, so we can now continue with the B section of our question. So we have the calculate, summary, clear, and close, right? So obviously we know the clear and then the close are the easiest ones among what we have here. So we are going to do that first, and then we move on to calculate and then summary. So I have my notepad here. We are going to do for the clear button first, which is going to clear our num pieces text box and then the name text box, right? All right, so how we expect you to write your model is you do private sub then the controls name, right? So this time around we are doing for the clear button, so we can do clear underscore click then you open bracket and close bracket. That's just it. And when you end your code, you can do end sub, right? So this is what we require. And from here, you can just call your text boxes. We have the name text box, name text box dot clear. Very simple. You can also do we have the num pieces text box dot test equals the empty string. And we also have another method where you do dot test equals string dot empty. That also works. So that will be for our clear button. And we can do for the close, right? So with the close, it says close button should close the form, giving the user options yes or no, right? So you have to ask the user if they want to close their form, and if they want to close it, if they choose yes, then we can close the form for our user, right? So how do we do that? Again, we need a model. We can do private sub the close button. So let's do close button, and the same thing here. We can do clear button underscore click, close button underscore click, right? So from here, since we need to ask the user if they want to close the form or not, we need what we call the dialog results, right? So we are going to declare a variable, let's say result. That'll be the name of our variable as dialog results. All right, this will be the data type of our variable result, and we can say our results will be equal to message box dot show some information to our user. Are you sure you want to close the form? Right, so this will be our message the user is going to see. Then we have the title of our message. We have edit form. Then we have the yes or no. So I'll come to the next line. Then we can do message box buttons dot yes, no. And from here, we can choose to end it here, or you can also add the message box icon, right? So I'm going to end it here. The most important thing is the user is going to have the option for yes or no, right? So right from here, we can bring our if statement to check if the result, all right, whatever the user is going to select is going to be saved inside results. All right, so if our result equals dialog result dot yes, there is the key thing, then we can simply close our form by saying dot close. Then we end if, all right, then we can end sub, right? So that would be for the close button. So we can move on to our calculate button and then the summary button. But before we start with the calculate button, which is simply the number of packages delivered multiplied by its respective rate, right? Before we do that, we can consider looking at our summary button. And our summary button requires us to display the total number of packages, the total pay, and then the average pay per person. All right, so for the average pay per person, just keep in mind that it's going to be the total pay divided by the number of employees, right? The number of employees was not mentioned in the question, so you just have to know what you have to do with the average pay per person, and then know what comes into play with it. All right. So this thing right here can be accumulated in the calculate button, but then we require it, or we want to see it in the summary button when we press the summary button. All right. So basically, the total number of packages, the total pay, these two are going to be global variables, right? Right. So let's get into it. So we declare our global variables, the two global variables first, and then we move on to the calculate button. All right. So we can do dime, or you can even say private, the variable name, let's say total pay as decimal. You can assign it to 0 and have dime total num of pieces as decimal. And with that, we can also say it's equal to 0. And then we have the last variable being the employee count, right? So this is going to be the variable to be counting the number of employees we get from the calculate button, right? So let's do dime employee count. Can get a better name for it. It all works. Integer equals 0. All right, then now let's get into our calculate button. So what we just need is a private sub calculate button underscore click. This is all what we need, right? Then we can end it here and dive into our code. All right, so let's look at the question again. We have include a calculate button to display the amount and rate per package multiply by packages delivered. So let's get into the code again. Now we can proceed with the calculate button. And with the calculate button, we are going to need some few local variables that will work inside the calculate button. So we create a variable to store the employee's name. We are also going to create another variable to take in the number of packages delivered. And then we are going to have an amount to save the amount from the product of the packages, number of packages delivered, multiplied by the rate that the number falls inside, right? So first of all, we do for the name. So let's say dime name as a string. And then we can assign it to the name text box dot text. Then we have another packages or num packages as an integer is equal to right, so we are going to assign the num packages text box dot text to the number of packages, right? But then before you assign this input to the num packages variable, you know you are going to use this in some sort of calculation, right? and whatever a user enters inside the text box is treated as a string. So we need to convert it into an integer, and then we do that by saying integer.parse. Then you put them in the brackets. So this here is going to convert the user's input inside the num packages text box into an integer and then assign it to the num packages, right? So then let's have another variable, say amount as double, and we can assign it to 0. All right, then let's go ahead and check for the ranges. So back to our question, the first range is from 1 to 150, and then the rate is 20. Right, before I move on, I'll have to talk about this. We have the validation, right? We have to consider doing the validation, and with the validation you can choose to do it inside the calculate button or outside the calculate button, where you use the validating event for the text boxes, right? So that is what I'm going to do in this lesson. So let's just focus on calculating the things we have to calculate for inside our calculate button, and after that we can consider doing the validation. So let's do if the num packages is less than or equal to, so let's do if it is greater than 0 and the num packages is less than 150, less than or equal to 150, then now we can bring our amount will be equal to the num packages, whatever the user entered, multiplied by the rate, which is 20 in our case, right? So else if the packages, let's look at the second range. We have 151 to 350. All right, so instead of checking for both ends, you can just check for the upper limit. So if the num packages is less than or equal to 350, then this also works, or you can check for both ranges as we did here, right? So you can decide to, you can just do if the num packages is less than or equal to 150, right? But this includes even 0 or negative values, right? Yeah, it works though, but yeah, anything you want to do. So the amount equals num packages multiplied by the rate, which is 50. Yes, so 50. Then I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. You can check for the next range, which is 500 with the rate as 80, sorry. So 500, and then this as 80. So else if the packages is less than or equal to 500, then amount is equal to number of packages multiplied by 80, and we can do for anything more than 500, right? So let's just use else and then move on with it. We can do else all right, so this also works. So anything greater than 500, let's just use this one, is going to have a rate of 100, right? And then let's end if. Right? This works. So with this, whatever the user is going to enter is going to be converted into integer and then passed into this. So we check if it is within this range. We multiply that number times 20 and then put that value inside our amount variable. Right, so we can just display the amount to the user using a message box. So let's do message box dot show yes, and we can provide the amount to the employee or the user. So in a case where you are passing this back into some sort of text box, right, you have to convert this amount to a string using .to string, right? You can still do this, but then this is needed. .to string is needed if you are passing it back to a text box, because text boxes only works with strings. All right, but then this is a message box, it also works. We can do our accumulation now. So the accumulation is going to be for the total pay, total number of packages, and then the total number of employees, right? So our total pay is going to be the total pay plus the amount each time the calculate button is pressed, right? So we can simply do total pay plus equals amount. It is a very simple syntax. You can also do total pay equals total pay plus amount. So that will be for total pay. Have total number of packages. All right, what did I do up here? I did total total number of pieces, no, total number of packages, right? So let's copy this variable name and then paste it right here. Total number of packages plus equals, or simply equal to total number of packages plus num packages. All right, plus these ones what the user will enter. So every time it's going to be what they entered, the number of a total. So if it's the first person, it's going to be 0 plus what they entered. If they entered 20, it's going to be 0 plus 20, and then this becomes 20. The next time another user comes, it's going to be 20 plus what the new user enters. So say 10 is going to be 20 plus 10, then we get 30. All right, so this is accumulation, and then we have the total number of employees. Let's go back and copy employee counts, right? So we can have employee count plus equals 1, right? So every time a user uses the form and then clicks on the calculate button, it adds an employee count, right? Yeah, so this works. And what we need again for our calculate button, I think we forgot to add our try catch. That's very important, where in cases where you'll be using you'll be doing calculations, right? So let's fix that here. You can do try, and then down here say catch some form of variable as exception. Then we can display a message and try, and let's also end sub here. And sub, you do this after you are done writing your program. So in here we can just do a general error message, right? So let's use message box dot show. Then we can give some error message. Let's say error, and then we can have error message. This is going to give a general error message, right? Depending on whatever um issue is going to pop up. All right. So this, you can do this for your calculate button, right? A very simple one. And this one, you don't need to do your validation inside here. So let's look at the validation down here. All right, so we have the code for the validation for the number of packages text box, right? We have this, and first thing we want to do is check if the field is empty. You do that by using string dot is now or white space, then you pass in the value, you check, right? So you can do this. Yeah, this is the reason why I use the error provider in the A section, right? So you can also use a message box to display your error to the message. This works, and you can also do if the num packages text box, right? So let's write here. If num packages text box dot text is equal to an empty string, then this also works. So let me put a comment here. All right, so you can do this, or you can even do another way you can do it is if num packages textbox dot text is equal to string dot empty string dot empty, then all right, this also works. You can call the text box and then the message comes. So take note that the name of the text box or the control comes first before your message. So this is to check if the text box is empty. Then we have the second thing to check for negative numbers and if whatever the user entered is not an integer, right? So in the same procedure, you do else if not integer dot try pass. You check for this if it is not an integer, or else if our variable, all right, is less than 0 for negative numbers, then you can throw some error to the user and ask them to enter a positive number. All right, and if everything is clear, we can move on with the code. So this is just for the num packages text box. All right, you can do for the name text box as well. Just for the name text box, all what you have to do is to check if it is empty or not. So in that case, you can do if string dot this. So let me do that here. Let me do that down here. So let's do private sub the name text box underscore validating. All right, so just check if it is empty. So this is going to be name text box. So if string dot is now or white space, then you check for the text property of your control. Paste it here, and we can paste it here too. Right, very simple. So if the name text box dot string dot text is equal to an empty string, or if the name text box dot text is equal to string dot empty, then you want to call that text box, the name text box, and then give some sort of message that the field or the control cannot be empty, right? So that would be for the validating. Then we can move on to the summary button. All right, so let's do the summary button quickly. We have private sub summary button underscore click, and we do this. So let's go back to our question. You will need a summary button to display the total number of packages. That will be one, the total pay, and the average pay per person. So what we actually will be needing here is the average pay per person, because we've already done the work we need to do for the total pay and then the total number of packages. Right. So let's get that. Let's declare a variable, say average pay as a decimal. Right, so we need this, and then again this is taking some sort of calculation, right? So you can do the try catch here too, and then we can also manually check for division by 0, right? So let's do that. If the number of employees, which is we used employee count, if the employee count is less than or equal to 0, if it is less than or equal to 0, then we want to show some message to the user that the number of employees cannot be less than 1, right? So this can give some sort of title, error, and whatever buttons you would like to include. Else if everything is okay, then we can do average pay is equal to the total pay which has been accumulated in the calculate button, right? So total pay divided by the employee count. Yes, then we can do and if. Yes, so this works for the division for the average pay. Then we can do a message to output this to the user, because that's what we are being asked to show. Then we can output the message to the user, because that's what the summary button is asking us to do. So you need a summary button to display these variables, right? So let's get back to our notepad and have some sort of message to the user. So let's do total number of packages, right? The total packages, whatever variable you used. Then again we have total pay. So you can do total pay as our total pay. Then the last thing is going to be the average pay per person. As the average pay. All right, so that will be the message. Then we can end our try catch. Can give some message box dot show let's say error and some general error message, then end catch and try and end sub for the summary button, right? So that will be it for the summary button tool, and as simple as that, you'll be done with your work, right? So the thing that can give you some sort of headache will be the validation, and we've gone through that, so shouldn't be that much of a problem. Yeah, you can take some time and go through the code. A very simple one. All right, so we are going to end it here, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share the videos with your friends.